Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to a live stream all about the 6 types of working genius. My name is Julie Griffin, and I am a certified facilitator, and I work at Meridian Technology Center in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And I am joined today by a fellow certified facilitator, Dale McIntyre. He's been certified about a year longer than I have, and has worked with bunches of small to medium-sized companies and or churches on the 6 types of working genius, which I think is what most people think about when they think about assessments like this, is how can my business or organization use it? But what's really cool is Dale has also found a sweet spot in working with couples. So he has worked with dozens of couples using the 6 types of working genius on how they can, streamline better, communicate, work together better as a 2-person team. And that's what our focus is going to be today. And Dale is going to talk about how couples can use the 6 types of working genius to better their relationships and strengthen their 2-person team. So welcome, Dale. We're glad you're here.
Well, hey, thanks, Julie. Glad to be here. And as you know, through certification, the maps and all the tools they give us are pretty much geared at teams and larger organizations. And when you get down to 2 people, I always struggled explaining it to 2 people and keeping them interested because it's kind of a blank map. I think we'll pull up an existing map just to show people who aren't familiar with it. And it is not, I should say, preempt all this. There we go. It is not our intention to cover working genius in any generic way or otherwise explain what those geniuses are. We've done that before. We'll probably do it again, lots. But you can see from this map, we have Rob and Kate. And very quickly, you can see that Rob and Kate have geniuses and frustrations that are diametrically opposed in the first 3 geniuses, from wonder, invention, and discernment. And from there, it gets a little bit scattered. But there's a couple things that I found challenging in this. And when you have a 2-person team, I think competencies tend to play more of a role because it's hard. It might be harder to borrow a genius if you're a 2-person team, unless you've done your family or your neighbors or other people like that, which is certainly possible. But in general, you're living with this other person and you've got to make things work, and you've got to get work done around your home. And whether it's planning a vacation or planning a garden, it all comes to bear. So this couple is a real couple. It's one that has come from our church, and they struggle like a lot of us do in marriages. They struggle, and then I did their team map, and it's like, boy, you can see exactly where that struggle happens. So I'm gonna dive in. We're gonna pull up the work that I've been doing. As this particular map doesn't actually show, it doesn't show the elevations of geniuses. It doesn't show the motion, which when we talk about geniuses being a ranking, not a rating, it doesn't show the order in which their preferences lie, which I think plays into the dynamics of couples that don't do well. So.
For sure. And I would just say, for those people who are watching here, if you've taken the assessment, I'd love for you to drop in the comments whatever your genius is. And if you have done it with your with your spouse, maybe what their pairings are too. Would be interesting to see live, like what people have experienced in their marriages or partnerships as far as working genius goes. And maybe what we're talking about today can relate back to something that you can use when you go home tonight.
Absolutely. Be no shortage of opinions.
Right. Which I think is what makes live streams fun. So like drop it in the comments and we'll have a conversation about it.
Exactly. Okay, document number 2. Here we go. So the first page is really showing the gears and how they all interrelate. And it's a really great depiction of when one gear turns, they all should turn. But then there's sometimes we have gaps in geniuses. And as I love to repeat to these couples things I've learned in class, which is at best, you've only got 4 out of the 6 geniuses for 2 people, for a 2-person team. So, hey, it's you got an immediate gap if I don't have geniuses here, so I have to tap into competencies. So we'll go to the next slide. And here's the basic visualization that I'm working with. We often talk about the elevation of geniuses and wonder being at 30,000 feet and tenacity being landing the plane. And that's something I try to communicate to a couple. It's all about how do we take this 6-letter job and develop a flight path bleh, so we can actually land the plane. So at best, again, you've got 4 of the 6 genius I know with my wife and I, we share a genius of galvanizing. And so at best, we've got 3 geniuses. So every job being a 6-letter job, we have to go hunt and peck into our competencies or even our frustrations from time to time to get work done around our house. Next slide. So I'll have Julie just bomb through these. I just grabbed these because I want to show people in couples that I counsel. It's like how do we land the plane? We start at wonder, we go to invention, and just keep flipping through there, Julie. And we go to invention, we go to discernment. Boom, there we go. And in each one, I've just grabbed some common boilerplate off the normal deck that we use for our workshops. We go all the way to tenacity, and now we've actually landed the plane. So I highlight it with green because that's the color we use for geniuses, and I continue that as I go on to the actual next slide. The other thing that's really important, I found it important with couples, is there's a point of decision that happens after discernment. So we have sometimes we talk about wonder being the definition of the sandbox, that ideas, invention happens within. And then there's that ID loop, that the flip back and forth between invention and discernment would be better if, can you make it a little smaller, a little bigger? But after discernment is done and you've got the right solution, that's a point of decision. And going back and reconsidering that point of decision is usually a no-no, right? It's like land the plane. Don't take it back up to 30,000 feet unless there's something, personal safety or some other crisis that you're trying to avoid. And then taking it from discernment all the way down through galvanizing, which is one of my geniuses, to the enablement, tenacity, and the finished work. And I'll share the 3 phases of work for them: the ideation phase, the activation phase, the implementation phase. So now let's look at Rob and Kate in the new world of this depiction. So you notice that geniuses for Kate are in green. Her primary geniuses in order are discernment and galvanizing. And then she goes right downhill to land the plane to ET. And if you're thinking about that, she's already got the land the plane motion. And what I have found is that between couples, especially couples where they struggle, they tend to start listening right about where their geniuses kick in. So you'll see in a minute why that's really paramount for this particular couple. But I include the pairing description. I include the caution, which is sort of the dark side of your pairing. What's the caution? How you should look out for your particular pairing, what it could lead to if you just lived in that zone. So then we go on to Rob's pairing, or his geniuses, and you see he's a creative dreamer. He's up in the clouds, exactly where Kate's frustrations are. So where he starts listening, she's tuned out, right? She's already gone downhill, and then he's starting downhill. He goes from I to W, so he's actually headed uphill with his preferences. But then even if he starts to go back downhill to discernment, it's a frustration, so it stops. It's like, well, let's go back and think about new ideas. Let's go back to the clouds because that's where I like to live. And all of a sudden you go downhill, and it's like there's this abyss right there. And of course, that's where Kate's geniuses take over. So the last thing I do is I put them together, as you might imagine. And normally this is animated, and I will talk through with them exactly what I just have shared here. But you can see on Kate's side, she's got this downhill motion that's already happening. She's already landing a plane. If she has an idea in her head, she's like, got discernment. This is a good idea. Never asked, did I wonder, did I invent the right
Mm-hmm.
solution? I'm just going to land the plane that's in my head, right? And then you look at Rob, who's now, he's going the other direction, right? Which is not a good
Mm-hmm.
recipe. And then he's got frustration and tenacity. So if she's looking for him to land the plane because her competencies are ET, well, he's got a competency in wanting to help, but he's got a frustration and tenacity. So she doesn't look for him for discernment, but if she looks for him for getting the job done, that's where some of the struggle happens. With a typical couple, I'll highlight 2 or 3 areas where there might be a problem, because I don't think Kate does any wondering, and that's where Rob lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the main issues. I didn't circle invention because I think if you've done the wondering, then the next step, if you trust the process, is invention. I did point out that galvanizing is actually her competency, or he's got a competency there, and she's got a genius there, but without wonder, without invention and discernment actually happening consciously on the same thing, it's unlikely they'll be on the same page as they try to galvanize in
Mm-hmm.
different directions. And then finally, the last one that I think is a real issue is like, well, they both kind of want to help, but he doesn't want to get it done. So who's on first? It's the conversation, honestly. It's
Yeah.
how do you have a healthy conversation about where are we in the process of this particular project? We're planning a vacation. I need somebody to go. One of us has got to do the research on the hotel. Who's going to do that? And if you get the corporate salute, right, that that's not going to work so well. So that, in essence, is sort of the aha that I've come up with, to try to help couples as they see themselves and their geniuses paired opposite each other on the classic elevation plane.
Yeah, that's
So
really, really interesting. And having primarily only worked with, companies and corporate teams and not diving into the two-person team that is a relationship, I can see how those concepts, really mirror each other. One of the things that, we emphasize, or I emphasize in my trainings, is that concept of elevation, and how we have a tendency to pull the conversation to where we feel most comfortable. And I love that you said, like, we don't start listening until that elevation gets to where we feel most comfortable. So it's not only that we're pulling the conversations, that we're not even engaging in the conversation until it hits that elevation that we prefer.
exactly, and I can't tell you how many times communication comes up as a challenge between husband and wife, and it's like, oh, we have to talk about this. Okay, well, where do you start? Well, we start
Mm-hmm.
where we're comfortable, right? And in the case of Rob, he wants to start up in the clouds, and I've got some ideas, and then he'll spend some time up there, and she will dismiss him just out of hand. She doesn't listen, because
Mm-hmm.
she's got an idea that she's already trying to land that plane on.
For sure. I can see that being, especially the opposite of his genius being her frustration. I could see that without the language of, working genius and having the intentionality of recognizing that process of work. We start with wonder and have to move forward from there. Without having that language and intentionality, I can see where, problems would pop up.
Yeah, and some of the cases though that I've done, I have a husband with a frustration, a wife with a genius, and literally one couple has their competencies are identical, right on top of each other. One's geniuses is the other's
Mm,
frustrations. And it's like, is that a problem, or is that a good thing?
it
What do you think?
depends.
It depends. Exactly. The classic answer. It depends. And in this case, if it's work they're doing together,
Hmm.
that can be really healthy if you use the language, right?
Hmm.
Because it it really takes advantage, allows their geniuses to shine, and one to say, I really don't like that. I'm glad you can do it.
Hmm.
Right. Then they hit their competencies, and again, the conversation is really important. And then as they land the plane, they flip-flop again, and it's, do you appreciate what your spouse brings to the table, and do you allow them to do that work? Now, if
Mhm.
it's fixing the car or something mechanical, in the case of this couple, not to stereotype, but in this particular couple's
Yeah.
instance, she's not going to do that, right? So she's not even going to want to use her genius of wonder or invention around that so much. But if it's work they have to do together to plan a vacation or
Mhm.
other generic work around the house, then it becomes really, really important to have the language to talk about it.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you've noticed or worked with any couples who had, their geniuses and frustrations flip-flopped and that they coincided or were opposites of the traditional male-female role. I don't know if I explained that very well, but, you mentioned mechanics. So, like, if there's something
Yep.
wrong with the car and,
Hmm.
typically, like, the man would, like, take care of
Yep.
or of that, but he doesn't have that, you know, tenacity genius. Is that an extra layer of consternation within the couple, or how have you seen that play out?
So I can speak about that personally because
Okay.
tenacity is one of my frustrations. It's also one of my wife's frustrations, but she
Okay.
grew up around cars.
Okay.
So she will hear things in a car
Uh-huh.
that I don't want to hear. If you know what I mean.
Uh-huh.
Because if I hear them and I think it's the brakes are rubbing, or there's something loose under the hood or whatever it is that's rattling, right? And you've got to check it out. I know that that is not my thing. I am not going
Mm.
to enjoy doing that, which means then I've got to jack up the tenacity to schedule a service appointment, take a vehicle in and have somebody else look at it, which, is equally not as fun for me.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we we live that out
Yeah.
with old cars for sure.
Which I think that in itself brings up a good point about, the craves and the crushes of our genius.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I always emphasize is that, yes, we have these things that we crave and things that crush us. And when we're working outside of our geniuses, those craves and crushes are amplified. So I can see where if, my partner is having to do something that falls into his frustration, I need to be extra aware of that I'm not, further crushing him
Yep.
and giving that extra praise, like, hey, I know this was your frustration, or that was really difficult, thank you for what you do, or whatever that particular genius craves. So I'd say that would probably, hold just as true, if not more true, for our personal relationships.
Yeah, I think, and it's so easy to think about it in a professional environment and ignore it
Mhm.
when you're at home. It's
Yeah.
really easy to hurt the ones we love the most, and that is very, very true. But therein lies the challenge, right? Is communicating your geniuses and what crushes you and what you crave out of those. Just like I have a discernment genius, and if somebody asks my opinion, right, I want them to trust me
Yeah.
that I have, like, don't go asking me to prove it, or don't go
Mhm.
asking 10 other people because you don't like my answer, right? It's like, and that's where sometimes we just have to shut our mouth, because the comments that happen after that are usually not that helpful
That is
unless
very
you
true.
have the language of
Yeah.
working genius, and you can actually speak to the things that are happening in the moment.
Mhm. Very true. So I know you and I, like, our geniuses do not overlap. So just,
Right.
I mean, like, we didn't cover, like, what in previous live streams, we'd cover, like, what the six geniuses are. But
Mhm.
I mean, for the people who are maybe watching for the first time today, do you want to cover, like, what your geniuses are, and then I'll cover mine, and then we'll
Sure.
fill in the gaps?
Sure. So, my first genius, as I mentioned, is discernment. So the genius of discernment is the person that uses intuition and gut feel. Um, they recognize patterns they've seen in other disciplines, or other, whether it's technology or other hobbies or interests or things like that, and people go to them for advice all the time. And the mistake you can make is thinking that someone with discernment is actually right, No, they just
Mhm.
enjoy providing their insights and advice. They tend to be right a lot because they enjoy it, so they tend to be
Mhm.
good at it. But that's the caution. If I may have an opinion on everything, but sometimes loosely held. And
For sure.
my second genius I've been using for this entire broadcast is the genius of galvanizing, because someone who's galvanizing is taking an idea they believe is a good idea, and they want to get other people excited about it, about using it, um, about implementing it, about why it's compelling. They tend to change people's to-do lists in a corporate
Mhm.
setting. um, I've got a new project, and this is the most important thing you could be working on going forward. So galvanizing is one of those things that comes very naturally to me. I have fun with it. That's why live streams are fun.
They are fun. And for me, enablement is my number one genius, which comes right after galvanizing. So Dale will get people with the genius of enablement excited, and then people like me come in. We're like, all right, how can I help? We also, have the ability to look at a situation and really anticipate what's going to be needed, and then come alongside and provide that help and assistance in the way that it's wanted and needed. They say people with the genius of enablement are some of the best team players because we know exactly how to help to best make the situation successful.
And
Um,
I'll just add that they help people with genius of enablement help on the terms of the person
yes,
asking, like the galvanizer.
yes, yes,
It's like, don't reinvent this. Just here's what I'm asking you can
yeah.
do. And they're willing to help on those terms, which is really special.
Yeah, I talk about folding towels in my trainings. Like someone with enablement will either ask you exactly how you want them folded, or if you're already folding, we'll watch you and then we'll emulate it so that you have their
Yes,
towels folded exactly how you want it. Because people have very strong opinions about how to fold towels.
yes, they do.
Yes, they do. My second genius is invention, which I go from, almost to the ground to whoop, back up to new ideas. But people with a genius of invention love to create and come up with new ideas and solutions to issues or problems. For me, it's especially in response to the needs of others. That enablement is first and invention is second. So if I see somebody else that has a challenge or needs help coming up with a new solution, man, I am on it right away. And but only for me, for the sake of other people. There are some people with a genius of invention that they love a blank whiteboard and coming up with new ideas out of nowhere
Mhm.
just for the sake of coming up with new ideas. Whereas with my specific pairing, I have to have it coupled with helping somebody else out. Um, my first competency is tenacity, which is, all the way at the other end. We're landing the plane.
And the plane.
Landing the plane, which I still love to do, getting things across the finish line, breaking through barriers, meeting deadlines, meeting, standards. As the people with tenacity are the ones that cross the finish line, get things done, hit those deadlines, kind of a no matter what, we're going to get this done type situation. And then where does wonder fall for you? Wonder is one of my frustrations.
Wonder is one of my competencies.
Okay.
So I go up into my competencies are in ideation,
Okay.
wonder and invention, and my tenacity and enablement are frustrations for me. So the genius of wonder is really what I like to describe it as the boundaries of the sandbox, right? That we can play
Mhm.
in with invention. It asks a lot of questions. It's responsive. People with the genius of wonder, you don't actually know they're wondering unless they open their mouth, and then they're typically asking questions. And they ask really good questions. And if you're already down the street trying to land the plane, sometimes those questions can be downright annoying. Um, Sometimes they're annoying because you forgot to wonder,
Mhm.
and other times they're annoying because you're landing the plane and they're trying to change airports on you. So it's one of those geniuses that you have to just love and respect up there, and make sure that you actually consider people's questions, whether
Mhm.
it's I can consider it right now in this moment, or can we hold that until the next time we're considering this particular work project.
Yep. Sure. And that consideration is exactly what people with a genius of wonder crave, is that consideration. So I know we've covered those in a out of order. So I just want to pop this back up. Um, it does go in the widget order: wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity from that order or, the elevation from top to bottom. So
Exactly.
it's so useful. So useful.
Well, I hope that's been insightful for those that are listening, and we'd love to talk about it more, but we promised 30 minutes. We're about to the end of our time.
Yeah.
If there's any questions, I'm sure we'll talk to them.
Yeah, no, I know for me, having not specifically applied it to relationships or couples, it's been very insightful for me to see how it crosses over from regular office corporate working teams to that personal relationship. So it makes me want to go send a code to my husband and be like, here, take this.
We'll be happy to put it into this format for you.
Right? No, that'd be awesome. So if somebody wants to work with you, do you work with couples that are like virtual, or do you only work in your geographic area, or how does that work for you, Dale?
If I would scream uncle if I got too many people that wanted to work with me. Virtually I can handle. That's not a problem. Right now I'm kind of busy. We're about to go on vacation for a couple of weeks. So, after the 4th of July, if you're interested in something like this, I could handle it up to a point. If I can't, I'll let you know, but it's fun. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy meeting people along the way. So if I can help them through any struggles they have, I'm more than happy to help.
Very good. Very good. I love it. Well, I don't think I have anything else to add. If you don't, and I don't think I see any other comments or questions. So there's no rule that says we have to make it to 30 minutes. So if that is it for now, then we can sign off. I don't know that we'll have a live stream in July since it's right before the 4th. But if you guys are here watching, stay tuned. Connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with Dale, some of the other facilitators that have been on before. I think there'll be a QR code at the end of the outro that will take you to a link to connect with us. And we'd love to visit with you about Working Genius and see you on the next live stream.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and attending and being a great audience.
So we'll see you guys next time. Take care.